Ladies and gentlemen, welcome to the Jayden Bryce Show. This show, we talk about the hottest topics in the world of sports. I'm glad to be back. We have a very action-packed week in the next couple of days in the NFL. The NFL Draft, one of the most coveted and prized events in the National Football League, is going to be held in 2 days in Pittsburgh, the NFL Draft of 2026. We're going to be talking about that just a little bit later on. But the focal and headliner of today's show, A.J. Brown to the Patriots. Adam Schefter had a big bombshell he dropped yesterday. Whole lot of news regarding some stories across the league, getting ready for the NFL Draft. And one of the big storylines from that article was the fact that there is pretty much a handshaking deal between the Patriots and the Eagles to send A.J. Brown to the Patriots. We want to get into that. We're going to get into some draft talk. Should the Cowboys trade up in the NFL Draft? I'm going to give my thoughts on that. Dexter Lawrence getting traded to the Bengals for the 10th pick in the upcoming draft. So the Giants have 2 first-round picks. Will Anderson got a contract extension. Brandon Aubrey got a contract extension. Then lastly, I'm going to give my overall just early thoughts heading into the NFL Draft. Be on the lookout on Thursday. I'm going to be having a live show covering the NFL Draft. It's going to be live reaction. I'm going to have that and a special guest with me on as well. Going to be a ton of fun. And if you will, and time permits, I would love to have you in there. And we're going to have a great time. But before we get into the show, as always, make sure you guys like, subscribe, share my podcast to a friend or family member. And without further ado, let's go ahead and get into the first topic of the show. So obviously, the headliner for today is the whole story surrounding A.J. Brown heading to the New England Patriots. Now, this is something that has been discussed across NFL media since the beginning of this past season in 2025. There has been many events that has occurred to where it felt like the relationship between A.J. Brown and the Eagles was coming to an end. At any point in this offseason, at any point, it has never felt like he was going to stay in Philly. Between the Dontavian Wicks trade that the Eagles just did a couple of weeks ago, the Howie Roseman responses in the media over the last couple months, the in-season antics between A.J. Brown and the head coach, and the experiences that A.J. Brown had in the media post-Super Bowl, post-playoff loss in the wild card round, didn't want to speak to the media. The heated exchange between him and Nick Sirianni. It never felt like any point that this was a marriage that was going to continue. At any point. And we know there's been the interesting articles by Diana Rossini, and we know that her credibility has been shot over the last couple weeks with the stuff going on with her and Mike Vrabel. I didn't want to talk about that, and I'm definitely not about to talk about it now. But we got to give credit to her. Even though there was some ethical concerns with her reporting, inevitably it was true. The Philadelphia Eagles and the Patriots have pretty much agreed for a post-June 1st trade handshaking deal to send send A.J. Brown to the Patriots. Now, a lot of this has to do, why is it post-June 1st? Has a lot to do with cap reasons. I think it lowers A.J. Brown's cap number and cap hit for not only the Patriots, but for the Eagles as well. So, and Peter Schrager went on ESPN today and even said that many people across the NFL, between executives and owners and everyone else, are still questioning if this deal is going to continue to go into fruition. Now, what are the positives and the negatives when it comes to this deal? I can say the negatives is you're losing A.J. Brown if you're Philly. This is a guy who has been very productive for Jalen Hurts. He has helped catapult your offense to winning a Super Bowl, to being in 2 Super Bowls. And he's been a good decoy. He's allowed Devontae Smith, to have a pivotal role in the offense. That is something that is going to go away for Philly. And most importantly, it's going to be interesting how Jalen Hurts plays down the stretch without A.J. Brown. Because one thing we can take into account with every quarterback in the league, whether you're Dak Prescott when you have CeeDee Lamb, if you're Joe Burrow and you have Jamar Chase, it is refreshing to know that you have that security blanket, that possession guy that you can always count on and you can always go to, no matter if it's first, second, third, or fourth down. You know you can get that ball to that guy, and that guy is going to be open. That is A.J. Brown. He's a big target. He's a top 5 wide receiver in the NFL. And it is going to be a huge loss for the Philadelphia offense, but more importantly, Jalen Hurts. And I say Jalen Hurts because, obviously because of the article that came out 3 weeks ago, and we covered it on our very last live stream that we did. The article that came out from multiple executives across the league saying they're questioning Jalen Hurts, his leadership, his mentality, how talented he is. How, does he actually want to win? Has he gotten full of himself now that he's won a Super Bowl and has a Super Bowl MVP? A lot of questioning with his character. So will he be able to be more innovative? Will Jalen Hurts be able to listen to Sean Mannion, his new offensive coordinator, and be open to new things? One of the main things that they were talking about in that article is the fact that he didn't want to go under center. Not having A.J. Brown is going to really drastically change the Philadelphia Eagles' offense. I don't think and many people have suggested this, I don't think the Philadelphia Eagles are going to become this 3 wide receiver set team like they were in years past. They might go more 2 tight end sets now. They re-signed Dallas Goedert, and you're going to have to rely on the run. Hopefully the offensive line can stay healthy. They lost their offensive line coach. So I don't know. There is a whole lot of negatives going on for Philly right now. You lost a lot of players. You lost Jalen Phillips in free agency. You had a couple players questioning retirement, but they inevitably come back. I think it was their Lane Dickerson, the left guard. You're about to lose A.J. Brown. But it was reports earlier yesterday that Howie Roseman is currently looking for a veteran player via trade, whether it's Jonathan Grenard, the edge rusher. There's multiple players that they have implicated to. And I don't believe, ultimately, that moving on from A.J. Brown is going to be able to benefit Devontae Smith. I love Devontae Smith. Do not get me wrong. I thought he was a stud at Alabama. He's a Heisman Trophy winner. He's a Super Bowl champion. But I do not believe in any way, form, or fashion that Devontae Smith is a number 1 wide receiver. I'm sorry. I just am not convinced. You cannot convince me otherwise. He already has a frail frame. He's been injured before. He doesn't have a bolstering injury history for a wide receiver. He misses a few games here or there. Wide receiver don't in the NFL every year. But having A.J. Brown lessened the load for Devontae Smith, and that's why he's been able to have the type of workflow and success that he has had so far in his career. And granted, I think Devontae Smith, even without A.J. Brown, has the capability to get 1,000 yards. Don't get me wrong. But I just do not see over multiple seasons, even a full season, of his body being able to handle number 1 receiver type repetitions. I just cannot see it. And for the Patriots, I think it's a home run move. Mike Vrabel gets his wide receiver that he had in Tennessee. And it's going to be very ironic that when the Titans got rid of A.J. Brown, they got worse. Will that happen with the Eagles? Are they going to get worse? It's going to be very interesting. Going to get Drake May a new weapon. You're going to have him. They said they're probably interested in shopping Kayshon Boutte. A lot of league executives around the league are pretty much going to be making calls to see if the Patriots are going to try and get rid of him. And he's going on the last year of his contract. They got the other wide receiver down there as well. Romeo Dobbs. He's pretty good. So the Patriots are set. They're going to get that wide receiver, something that they need. They need to shore up offensive line in this upcoming draft, and I know that they are more than likely going to do so with their first round pick. So A.J. Brown to the Patriots, phenomenal move. If I'm A.J., I am 100% trying to get out of Philadelphia. The media is one of the worst media markets it's one of the worst where it pertains to harassment, okay? Philly media is brutal. They are tough. Week in and week out, win or lose, they are going to be super critical of you as a player. So that is something. You're A.J. Brown. You gave them everything everything that they could ask for. You delivered them a championship. Say your goodbyes. Head up to Boston, Massachusetts. Join a team who just went to a Super Bowl. They didn't win, but they have every capacity to be able to win this upcoming season. Join that. Give Drake May a weapon. You join your old friend Mike Vrabel. You're getting out of the daunting NFC, and you're heading to, in my opinion, a much lighter conference in the AFC. It's a win-win situation, and you're in a much easier conference. So it's a win-win for A.J. Brown, but it might be a big negative for the Eagles. That's just going to be something that we're going to have to wait and see in the future. Now, something interesting that has been going on, an interesting topic around the NFL media space. One that really got me fired up over the week, and I really could not wait to discuss it when I got on my podcast. There has been many stories coming out about the Dallas Cowboys potentially trading up to get a star player in this upcoming draft. They currently hold the 12th and the 20th pick on Thursday night. Now, if you want my immediate response to this question, should Dallas trade up? Please forgive me for the typo in my lower third. That is awful. If you were to ask me right now, as a fan and as a critic, as a journalist, is it a smart idea for the Dallas Cowboys to trade up in this draft? I just don't think so. Because if you don't have 2 first-round picks in this draft, what was the point of trading Micah Parsons? Any smart franchise would not trade a Hall of Fame caliber player in Micah Parsons, and you get 2 first-round picks for him in 2027 and 2026. So you get 4 first-round picks in 2 years for Micah Parsons, and inevitably you get rid of those 2 first-round picks because you trade one for Quinnen Williams, which he's a pretty good player, great defensive tackle. It is a premier position that the Dallas Cowboys has struggled to draft for the last 10, 20 years, which I can agree with that to that extent. But you cannot double down on that by, in this draft, trading up and getting rid of that another first-round pick just to get one player. Whether that be Sonny Styles, Ruben Bain, Caleb Downs, Mansour Delane, which are the big targets right now for the Dallas Cowboys. And even Adam Schefter, in the same article that we just talked about with A.J. Brown, Arvell Reese is the name that the Dallas Cowboys is potentially looking at if he slides to trade up and get him. Now, there's multiple articles coming out as well that the Dallas Cowboys are not wanting to trade off the 20th pick. And that is what I have said. I would be in favor of this if you are able to still keep the 20th pick. I don't want to trade. I don't like the idea of getting rid of 12 and 20, trading up for the 6th or the 3rd pick, 9th pick, and then getting rid of 20 and then trading that away and picking in the 2nd round. I'm just not a fan of that. I would rather have 2 good players than 1 great player. I would rather, instead of trading up to the 6th pick and getting Sonny Styles, if I were Dallas, I would rather keep what I have and get whatever the fella's name, the safety from Oregon. You could get him. There's an opportunity of Caleb Downs sliding down, Mansour Delane sliding down. You can get that premier corner that you need. You know, you can even trade back, get more picks, so you can get the linebacker that you really need at a pretty premier price to where you're not overpaying for that position with the 20th pick. There's multiple ways that Dallas can maneuver this. And now this is another topic that we're going to talk about at the last topic of the show about my early thoughts leading into the NFL draft. That is just an interesting part of this draft that I am very interested in looking at. Multiple teams like the Cowboys. Jordan Schultz, he works for the Bleacher Report. he has reported that it is anticipated that this is going to be a first round with the most trade ups in NFL history. He predicted it 2 weeks ago, and that is just a storyline that really fascinates me. What teams are going to trade up to get that player that they want? And Dallas is going to be one of these teams. How are these teams going to chess match this? Because there's multiple teams with first round picks. You have Dallas, you have the Jets, you have the Chiefs, and I think I'm missing 2 more that have multiple first round picks. Because the Raiders were fixing to be one of them until, that trade fell through for Max Crosby. So, can you trade up and still keep the number 2 pick? Well, sorry, keep your 2 picks, not your number 2 pick, but keep your 2 picks. So, there's a lot of, Peter Schrager talked about it today. What if you can trade with the Kansas City Chiefs and y'all pretty much just pick swap? Dallas, you move from 12 and you get the 9 so you can get the chance of getting that player that you want, rather it be Delane, Downs, Sonny Styles, or Ruben Bain. You can get that player by trading up, and instead of having to give up your 20th pick as well to trade with the Chiefs, all you have to do is swap picks. So instead, you get the Chiefs 20, I think it's pick 29 that they get, and the Chiefs will get your 20th pick. It's a win-win situation. You can do that, or they were throwing across another trade. I think it was with the Giants, which I don't see a trade within divisions happening whatsoever. You trade with the Giants, pick swaps there. There's multiple ways you can do this. There is multiple ways where you can manipulate. Oh, the Giants were another team with multiple first-round picks. But there are multiple ways that you can maneuver this if you are the Dallas Cowboys in order to keep your 2 picks. Now, my wish list of players for Dallas at 12, because of this being it's a very deep defense edge rusher draft. It's deep talent-wise. It's deep at edge rusher. But what many people have said, and I agree, that this is a very top-heavy draft. With the star talent being, there's probably 12, 13, 14 players with a first-round grade. It is not a very top-heavy, talented star draft. So my wish list for players for Dallas is the names that I've previously stated. At 12, Sonny Styles, Mansour Delane, Caleb Downs, or Ruben Bain. That is my wish list of players for the Dallas Cowboys if they were to stay put or potentially move up just a couple more slots to the 9th or the 10th pick in order to get one of those players. Now, me personally, I'm going to go ahead and just give my early predictions. I don't think Sonny Styles is going to be there at 12. I don't think Ruben Bain is going to be there at 12. The only 2 people that I see being there at 12, and multiple people have talked about this, the Peter Schragers and a couple people talking about the Dallas Cowboys. Delane and Downs seem to be the 2 names that really, really have a good shot of being there at 12. Caleb Downs, the safety position, it is not a pretty premier position. Derwin James slipped when he was in his draft. He was projected to be a top 10 pick. He slid all the way to 17. Kyle Hamilton, he was supposed to be a projected top 10 pick. He ended up going 14th. So the safety position is one that seems to slide. But with the lackluster of top-heavy talent in this draft, who knows if he's going to continue to slide. There's a report already that just came out just an hour ago about many executives thinking there's going to be more offensive linemen going top 15 than what is currently projected. There is so much unpredictability with the NFL draft. That's what makes it so amazing, and I can't wait to get to that. So what are the Cowboys going to do going into Thursday night? Is one that we are going to be covering, me and my special guest on the show. We cannot wait to get to it come Thursday night. We got approximately, in just a couple of hours, approximately 48 hours until the 2024 and a 2026, NFL draft. Now let's move on to some Giants talk. We talked about the big move about them trading and getting the 2 first-round picks. So Dexter Lawrence was traded to the Cincinnati Bengals over the weekend. So the Giants trade away Dexter Lawrence for and got the 10th pick in return. So there's just pretty much player for pick. And and my first reaction to this trade was pretty much like, they got that type of compensation for Dexter Lawrence. This is like a premier scenario that Dallas really wanted. You wanted to trade away that type of player in like a premium player, like a guy in Dexter Lawrence who's had multiple Pro Bowls. I think he's made an All-Pro team one time, I believe. He's a top 3 player at his position when healthy. This is the type of pick that you want when you have 2 first-round picks. You want to have the number 5 pick and the number 10 pick in the NFL draft. And now if you're the Dallas Cowboys, instead you trade away Micah Parsons with the Packers, and you know the Packers are not going to have a bad record, so you're going to be picking in the 20s. And even close to the 30th pick, you're going to be more likely to pick from 15 and up if you're traded to a team like the Packers instead of the 10 and unders like you are for trading with the Bengals. The Bengals have not been good over the last couple of years, and guess what? They got the 10th pick out of it. Absolutely nuts. So first of all, I loved it for the G-men. I loved it. You get rid, and John Harbaugh has stated in the media, it felt like this was leaning towards this happening last week when they were interviewing John Harbaugh. John Harbaugh said, hey, if you do not want to be here, we don't need you. Every player is tradable. So that pretty much was music to Dexter Lawrence's ears, and he was like, let me go ahead and get up out of here. So in return, you get 2 first-round picks. Now, if you're John Harbaugh, you could get Styles and Downs. But the signals point to them potentially getting an offensive player. But we'll talk about that. So for G-Men, I loved it. It sets you up for an opportunity to get 2 premier defensive players, or you can get the premier defensive player like the Sonny Styles at 5, and at 10, you can maybe get the offensive lineman that you need. Jackson Dart, you got to protect him. Okay, it's bad enough he has his antics already where he wants to play Superman. So if anything, you want to shore up your offensive line at all costs. Maybe get a tackle. Andrew Thomas. You cannot rely on him to stay healthy. Granted, he's a great offensive tackle. When he's healthy, he's one of the best. But in no way, form, or fashion can you trust this guy in Andrew Thomas to be healthy. So maybe that's a route they go. There's been talks with Adam Schefter. He's reported they love Jordan Tyson. Malik Neighbors, he's a stud. He's a Pro Bowler when healthy, but he's already tore his ACL, so who knows what type of impact that he's going to have. So maybe you can get somebody opposite of him by picking up somebody like Jordan Tyson. Or you could do what John Harbaugh has done in the past when he had the stacked roster that he had when he was winning Super Bowls defensively. You can go get those 2 stud defensive players to pair along with Thibodeau and Brian Burns by picking up a Sonny Styles at linebacker and getting a Caleb Downs to put at safety. That would be a dream ideal scenario for me if I'm a Giants fan. Now for the Bengals, I gotta say this is a little to be determined because there's multiple ways you can think about this. When you think about it just from the idea of trading away the 10th pick for a guy in Dexter Lawrence who had a half a sack, coming off a really down year, he had a half a sack. Matabike, who only played 2 games with Ravens, had 2.5 sacks. So over 17 games, Dexter Lawrence had a half a sack. Now you can think about it in a multitude of ways. Dexter Lawrence is still a top 3 defensive tackle, and you're the Bengals. Your defense absolutely stunk, and that's putting it a little bit lightly. So you can argue like, hey, we are desperate for defensive help. We at the 10th overall pick, we don't know if we can get our hands on a Reuben Bain or a Sonny Styles or even a Caleb Downs. We're not 100% sure, so we're just going to roll the dice. We've signed Mafe. We've got Jonathan Allen already. We got a couple of key pieces, so why don't we just roll the dice, get this top 3 player, and hopefully it can help the pass rush, because that is what Dexter Lawrence did when he was with the Giants. Not this year, but the year before when they first got Brian Burns. With him, Thibodeau, Brian Burns, they wreaked havoc. They were a top 5 defensive line with getting sacks, I believe, in the NFL. So that is the type of ability that Dexter Lawrence can bring to your building, and something that he could do for the Cincinnati Bengals because they lost Trey Hendrickson, so they've lost a bit of pass rush. But when you think about it from another lens, and Nick Wright really pointed out, you're trading away the 10th pick with an opportunity to get one of those players that I've discussed previously. And you're going to get them for a guaranteed 5 years. Instead of trading that away for a player that you're more than likely going to have for just maybe 2-3 at the max. Originally, his contract was 2 years. They just gave him a 1-year, $28 million contract extension, so he signed 3 years. Who knows if he even makes it 2? Who knows if he's going to continue to be healthy? There are so many question marks when you make this type of move. You kind of ask yourself, was it really worth giving up the 10th overall pick. And Nick Wright said it best. When you first look at that trade, you kind of just sit and ask yourself, I'm like, okay, so they traded away they traded Dexter Lawrence, but also what else did they get out of it? You know, did you get Dexter Lawrence and an extra pick? Did you get Dexter Lawrence and a player? Like, no, you just pretty much straight up traded for Dexter Lawrence for the 10th pick. It was just absolutely wild to me. So love this for the G-men. If you're the Giants, you got to be happy with the direction that you're going to in your first draft, first season under John Harbaugh. You have 2 early first-round picks. You have your quarterback. You have Brian Burns, who had a pretty good year on a very bad defense. You just got to be happy if you're a Giants fan. You see that, you know, the Cowboys, what are they going to do? You don't know. The Eagles, they are pretty much seem to be on the downfall. We know we don't trust the Commanders. Like, you got to be pretty happy if you're a Giants fan with this move, and you got to be excited going into the draft with what type of player you're going to get your hands on if you are the G-men. And for the Bengals, hey, you got to give them credit where credit is due. They are a pretty conservative franchise. They take a big swing. It's just they need help on that back end. That's the reason why I was really hoping they would keep that pick, maybe get a Caleb Downs or a Mansour Delane to shore up that back end, because that back seven they have is brutal. Granted, they built their front seven in free agency, but from the top of my head, I don't know of any cornerbacks or safeties that they signed in free agency that justify them making this type of move and giving up on one of the premier secondary players in the first 10 picks of the draft. So that's just pretty much my 2 cents when it comes to that. Brandon Aubrey. I originally thought I was going to talk about Will Anderson, but we'll get to Will Anderson in the next one. Let me do something right quick, ladies and gentlemen. Give me 1 minute. Gotta fix something right quick before we finish what we're going to discuss. And while I am doing this, please remember that I am going to be live covering the NFL draft on Thursday. I have me and a special guest. We're going to cover it live. We're going to be reacting to all the picks live for the whole duration of the draft. We're going to roughly start 5 minutes before the draft gets ready to start. So it's going to be a good time. Make sure you guys are there, prepped and ready to go and to watch that. So I'm prepped and ready to go. Let's go ahead and get to Brandon Aubrey. Now, Brandon Aubrey, getting to the contract extension between him and Will Anderson. Brandon Aubrey signed a 4-year, $28 million contract with the Dallas Cowboys to stay with the star on his helmet. That is currently an annual value of $7 million per year. The previous person that had the highest paid salary at the kicker position was the Buck kicker, Harrison Buckner for the Kansas City Chiefs. I think he was at $6,018,000 or something like that. So basically, which is pretty good for the Dallas Cowboys. Got to give them credit. They were able to sign the best kicker in the NFL to just $800,000 more to make him the highest paid kicker in the NFL and NFL history. Got to tip the cap to Jerry Jones, because originally there were a lot of reports going around in the league and league circles when it pertains to Brandon Aubrey of wanting close to north of $8 to $9 million per year annual value, which was like a $2 million jump from what the leading kicker was getting. And that was just, and remember that whole stuff was going around with the draft. And if you're a Cowboys fan, and if you are NFL media or anyone who pays attention to this type stuff, you were pretty much just sitting there shaking your head like, no, I'm not doing that. Love the kicker position. It's super valuable, but there's no way we are paying a kicker this type of money. So I got to give credit where credit is due, because you got the best kicker in the NFL at a reasonable price. $800,000 more. You got to give credit where credit is due. You got to give credit to Brandon Aubrey as well. He wasn't super greedy. The Cowboys, and this is why this is a big deal, and the reason why I wanted to talk about it, because the Dallas Cowboys have had kicker problems ever since Dan Bailey has left the building. That was roughly 10 10 years. When was Dan Bailey? I think Dan Bailey last kicked for Dallas, 2017, 2018? It's been a while. And it's big because Brandon Aubrey has not only been the best kicker in the NFL, he's been one of the most accurate. He hits 60 yards like it's absolutely nothing. And when you think about it, when you had the Greg Zuerleins and the Brett Mahers in the playoffs, when they were making these playoff runs in 2020, 2021, 22, 23, and 2022, 21, 22, and 23. And did they make a run in 24? I can't remember if they made a run in the playoffs in 24. Yeah, because 2 years ago, they were the number one. Yeah, I think it was 24 was the last time we were in the playoffs. You were having kicker problems. There were, I think it was the divisional round game against the San Francisco 49ers at their place, where if our kicker would have made a field goal, we could possibly be in the NFC Championship game for the first time in 28 years. And there was another game where the kicking screwed us as well. So when you look across the league, look at the Super Bowl winners, look who's making deep runs in the playoffs. Look at the Seahawks this year. What did they have? A kicker that you could count on. What about the Eagles? Last year, they had a kicker they can count on, which he had the yips this year. But in the previous years, when they went to the Super Bowl last year and a couple years before that, they had a kicker that you can rely on. And that is what Brandon Aubrey is for the Dallas Cowboys. When he trots out the kick, and granted, he was sort of developing the yips towards the end of the year, Christmas and on. But okay, the season was over with. We were playing for nothing. Look, fine. But it just feels fantastic as a fan, and I'm pretty sure as a player on the Dallas Cowboys, that you can get the ball to the the opposite 45-yard line and potentially be in field goal range with Brandon Aubrey in a position to kick a game-winning kick, because he has the capacity and capability to be able to make that sort of kick. And it's just also an amazing story. You're coming from a guy, they said he was a software engineer, and his wife was seeing all these kickers miss kicks on TV, and he looked at her husband and was like, you know what, honey? You can make these type of kicks. He was a previous soccer player. He tries out for the USFL, makes the team, does pretty good, and he ends up making a name for himself. The Cowboys sign him, and he's been a godsend ever since. He kicks the football with effort, and he's a great addition to the Dallas Cowboys. So shout out to Brandon Aubrey for getting his contract extension, and another guy who is definitely worthy of his contract extension, Will Anderson Jr. He got a huge payday by the Houston Texans. The contract was done by, don't know the lady's name, but we got to give her credit. She was the one who got Jalen Hurts' deal done. Don't know her name, but I got to give a lot of credit to her. Is Jalen Hurts' agent. She signed a contract for Will Anderson that is making him the highest paid non-quarterback in the NFL at $50 million. Let me say that again. $50 million. And it's very fascinating just how far and drastic this edge market has become. I remember when Max Crosby signed his deal for $36 million, and we were just sitting there like, that's a lot of money for an edge rusher. Then flashback, just fast forward, maybe just a couple months after that, Myles Garrett signs his contract for $40 million, and you're just sitting there like, that is just a lot of money. Same thing we could say, fast go backtrack with Nick Bosa when he signed his contract. And then TJ Watt got his. And now we had Micah Parsons. And then we got this bombshell of a contract. And before we get into the gist of the contract and what it means for everything else, let's just give a tip of the cap to Will Anderson. He's a stud. Okay. He is deserving of this contract. And I want to compare this to the Dallas Cowboys with the Micah Parsons thing. Because Will Anderson, in my opinion, is a player I would be more comfortable paying this type of price for in comparison to Micah Parsons. Because Micah Parsons was never a true edge rusher. He played linebacker in college. Micah Parsons pretty much became an edge rusher because Dan Quinn was trying to be Mr. Innovative and was like, you know what? You're just so fast and so quick. Why don't we just insert you into being an edge rusher? You can just go get the quarterback. But Will Anderson at Alabama, he was the premier edge rusher. He played that position in college. He got drafted by it, and he got paid to make the plays and be the best all-around edge rusher you can be. He stops the run. He gets to the quarterback. He is your ultimate stud on and off the field. He's a phenomenal football character. He is a guy that you want in your locker room leading the defense. You hear nothing about him from the media in any way, form, or fashion, and this is why it's different than Micah Parsons. Micah Parsons, he was healthy, but he seemed like he was a headache in the media. He's got his own podcast, this and everything else. He was saying all this stuff that just did not help the team's cause in pertaining to the Dallas Cowboys. But this guy, he just, how is it my father puts it, he just picks up his lunch pail and goes to work. He's no bull crap, no bull jive. He suits up and puts the pads on. He's ready to go get your quarterback. And that is who Will Anderson is. And that's the type of guy, and you got to give credit. He's a dominant force. The trade up for him in the 2023 draft with C.J. Stroud, to where they had the number 2 pick, you got C.J. Stroud, and then you trade up with the Cardinals, and you get this guy, Will Anderson. That to me, that trade up for Will Anderson has got to be an all-time NFL draft move in the history of the NFL draft. Just an absolute win and an absolute steal. I know the Cardinals would absolutely love to have Will Anderson, because the two trades that the trades that they gave up for him and the players that they got for them picks that they got for the trade for Will Anderson, they have turned out to be absolutely nothing. And you got to give the GM credit for doing that move. And that's just a phenomenal idea. That trade up for Will Anderson will go down as easily one of the best draft trades in the history of the NFL. Just phenomenal. He's a dominant force. He had an all-pro year this year, if I'm not mistaken. He's been a multiple-time Pro Bowler. The sky is the limit with him. He is on a Hall of Fame trajectory. He doesn't have injury history. When he's on the field, he's wreaking havoc. And now, away from giving him his flowers just a little bit, it seems to me that the edge market is just reaching quarterback status. You have quarterback. Now it's pretty much the edge rushers, and then you have wide receivers. That to me lets you know if you are a team drafting, because I know there's a lot of questions right now regarding the Jeremiah Love situation at running back. A lot of teams are questioning, hey, what should you do if you're the Cardinals and the Titans at 3 and 4? Do you really want to put this type of compensation in a running back so early? I think the last time a running back was drafted in the top 10 or top 5, if I can't remember, it was top 5 or top 10. The last one was Saquon Barkley, and that was 8 years ago. And I think the one that previously drafted a running back in the first round before that, after Saquon, I think it was roughly Jahmyr Gibbs was the first one that comes to my mind, and I don't even remember if he was a top 10 pick or not. I can't remember. I remember the Lions traded up to get Jahmyr Gibbs, if I remember correctly. I just can't remember what exact pick he was. We're not going to go to that for the context of this, but it really lets you think about, when this upcoming draft, the positional value of players. So with your top 5 to 10 picks, getting a wide receiver or getting an edge rusher and even a quarterback, that is the positional value you want to seek for your top 10 picks. Granted, for wide receiver, and Colin Cowherd pointed this out in his show today, I think. He was talking about how statistics show that the wide receiver position is one that continues to be the one of positional value that is more than likely to become a bust in reference to the other positions like the edge rushers and everyone else. So the edge market has just reached quarterback status. It's absolutely insane. Right now, with the Will Anderson deal, the Texans are paying Will Anderson $50 million a year to play edge rusher alongside Danielle Hunter. They're paying Danielle Hunter $40 million. So they're investing almost $100 million in edge rushers to go get the quarterback. That is just absolutely insane. And overall, the NFL's contracts in 5 years, I am going to enjoy being, I'll definitely have a job in media by then. It is just going to be astonishing and very, very wild times to be able to cover that and see where these contracts are going to get to in 5 years. The salary cap continues to go up. I can only imagine how higher it's going to get with all these deals that the NFL is continuing to make, with Prime Video, with Netflix, all these streaming services getting the NFL games. The games that are going to overseas now, you got games being played in Brazil, Australia, London still. Like the league is just pretty much expanding. Mexico even. The league is expanding before our very eyes, and who knows where the market is going with these positional values in regards to other key positions. Offensive tackles. Linderbaum got a crap ton of money. He's the highest paid center. I just cannot quite remember the numbers from the top of my head. So that is going to be that. Now, heading to our last topic. Thank you all for listening. Early thoughts on the NFL draft. There's multiple storylines that we can take here, but these are pretty much the fascinating stories that I'm looking forward to heading into Thursday night, and some that many can be looking forward to when you're looking at the First Takes and all the other media, TV hosts across the national airways. My number one favorite storyline is pretty much what is Dallas going to do. I know it's that's a little crazy. Jayden, you're a Dallas Cowboys fan. Of course you're going to say just guys, just from a journalistic and a fan standpoint. If you combine the both, it's a non-biased idea, guys. Just relax, okay? I think the Dallas Cowboys storyline is just very interesting for multiple reasons. Number one, it is without a shadow of a doubt, we all think that the Dallas Cowboys are pretty much a defense away from being a Super Bowl caliber competing team. They have the offense. They had a top 3 offense just this year. The defense was just absolutely god-awful under Matt Eberflus. So, you made a couple moves. You traded for Rashawn Gary. You signed a safety, Jalen Thompson. You're about to get Quentin Williams for a full year. Demarion Overshawn is about to get a whole new year of rest. He's about to get a full season. Shavon Reveal, he gets another full season as well. You got a new defensive coordinator, Christian Parker, who comes from the Vic Fangio tree. We've seen the success that he's had with the Philadelphia Eagles over there as a defensive back coach. He's the one who groomed Cooper DeJean and Quinyon Mitchell over there in Philly to being 2 all-pro players just this year. So it's going to be very exciting times for the Dallas Cowboys just this upcoming year, having 2 first-round picks, and they're more likely going to be on defense. And Christian Parker is going to be able to get his hands on somebody like a Sonny Styles or a Caleb Downs or a Mansour Delane. Like it's just very exciting to see how that can go. So how is Dallas going to maneuver these picks? How do you know that you're going to be able to get your hands on a premier player on defense? Because I am one that has said this, and I quoted this tweet roughly maybe a month and a half ago. I said if Dallas is not, this is when Dallas was getting mocked Sonny Styles, and ever since Styles' combine, that has been pretty much non-existent. Everybody just believes Sonny Styles is not going to be there at 12. But even then, excuse me, I felt as if Dallas does not get their hands on Mansour Delane, Caleb Downs, or Sonny Styles, it's just going to be a very disappointing draft. You got the Reuben Baines, and you have Arvell Reese, and you have David Bailey's. Like, these are all players that were mocked early to the Dallas Cowboys. Not Arvell Reese, but David Bailey was mocked early to the Dallas Cowboys. This is when they were doing the early mock drafts, before the combine, even before the college football season was over with. You had Sonny Styles, you had David Bailey, you had Mansour Delane, and you even had Caleb Downs. Like, these are 4 players that were getting mocked to the Cowboys by multiple people in the NFL who covered the NFL draft. And come draft day on Thursday, if Dallas does not get their hands on any one of those players, it is just going to be phenomenally disappointing. So that is something that I'm going to be interested to see happens when it just pertains to Dallas Cowboys. Also, who actually trades up? I said earlier on when we were talking about the Dallas Cowboys moving up, I stated that Jordan Schultz reported that many league executives across the league have the idea that this is going to be the draft, the first draft with the most teams trading up because of the multitude of teams that have multiple first-round picks, and because of the talent is very top-heavy. We can comfortably say that there are really only 12, 13, 14, 15 players that really deserve to be first-round picks. Definitely when we get to pick 19 and 20, the teams that made the playoffs are getting ready to pick their players. Not many people believe that those players are worthy and caliber first round talents. So it's going to be interesting why teams trade up. Do the Cardinals trade back? Is the team going to, the Browns want to trade back? There's multiple teams want to make calls to trade back. So it's going to be interesting to see who trades up, who are going to, give up the most cheese to get the player that they really want. Where will the premier players land? My one that I'm really keeping my eyes on is, and I can say now this is biased. Y'all might have thought my ideas about the Cowboys being a number one storyline heading to the draft is biased, but I think this one's biased. I'm very interested to see where Caleb Downs goes. I even pointed out the whole farce that happened with him about the whole knee issue, that whole ordeal going on. I thought that was all bull crap from the beginning. I'm very much in favor of thinking that Caleb Downs, without a shadow of a doubt, is my top 3 best player in this draft. If we're just thinking about just overall talent point of view, if you take into account Fernando Mendoza, the David Baileys, just everyone, I think Caleb Downs is a top 3 player in this draft overall. I just think I'm not taking into account his positional value. I'm just thinking about raw talent. He's a top 3 player in this draft, without a shadow of a doubt. So I'm interested to see where he goes. I want to see how far he slips. There was an article that came out today from the SNY, who covered the New York Giants. They are saying that they are pretty much predicting right now that the Giants may be a lot to take Caleb Downs at 5. So he is a player that I'm very, very interested in seeing is going to happen to. Jeremiah Love, the positional value thing that we just talked about, Will Anderson, how is that going to affect where he gets drafted? He's pretty much mocked right now to go to either the Titans or the Cardinals at 3 and 4. There was an article that came out yesterday about the Cardinals pretty much saying, yeah, we're pretty much taking Jeremiah Love at number 3. So that's going to be interesting. Another star player, Ruben Bain, he's a controversial one. The short arms, how is that going to affect him in his draft stock? Jordan Tyson, he's played 17 games in 3 years. How does that affect his draft stock? People have obviously stated he is, without a shadow of a doubt, the best wide receiver available in this draft outside of Cardinal Tate. Just non-injury reasons, from overall talent. Jordan Tyson is the guy. Sonny Styles, how high does he go? Just multiple ways, that stories that we could think of for where would the premier players go. Jets rebuild. The Jets have what? 8 first round picks in the next 3-4 years. So hey, what did they do at number 2? I think the media is pretty much saying now that it is remarkably right now a toss-up between Arvell Reese and David Bailey for them in number 2. What are they going to do with the 16th pick? Are they going to go and get Ty Simpson? That's going to be interesting. So I want to see what the Jets are going to be able to do to rebuild that franchise after giving up a couple of their marquee players. They got rid of Sauce Gardner and Quentin Williams. They traded away their edge rusher to the Titans. I cannot remember his name for the top of my head, but they got rid of him as well. Who slips? Caleb Downs, is he's going to slip? Or fall, rather. I think fall is the rather word we can do. Is Caleb Downs going to fall? Jeremiah Love, will he fall? One of the offensive linemen for injury issues, will they fall? Jermod McCoy, he's an interesting name. Many people are saying that he's a top 10 talent in this draft, but because of his injury problems right now, he could fall out of the first round. Who slips? That's going to be interesting to see. And lastly, from my top of my knowledge, just storylines heading up to the league. Ty Simpson. We know that this is going to be the first draft in a while to where the quarterback talent is just absolutely terrible. It is without a doubt Fernando Mendoza is the premier quarterback that is going to be taken with the first overall pick. There are no doubts about that. It's the quarterback draft this year is so bleak that it's already been reported that the Raiders have already given Fernando Mendoza a playbook. Him and Kubiak has already been talking already about getting him acclimated with the playbook. Like, it's just wild. You don't hear a story like that if you have the Drake May class with Caleb Williams and Drake May and Jayden Daniels and all those guys in that quarterback class, because you're sitting there as a GM, you're sitting there for months, you're just sitting there thinking, man, what quarterback do we take? But it's just quarterback class this year is so terrible that you already know that, okay, Fernando Mendoza is the only logical answer at number one. So Ty Simpson is going to be an interesting watch. Many people are thinking that the Cardinals are wanting to going to trade back and end up getting 2 first-round picks and drafting Ty Simpson later on in the first round. I think there is a good possibility on Thursday night that Ty Simpson gets drafted. I don't think Ty Simpson is one of the players that are going to be invited to the combine, but I think Ty Simpson has a very, very good shot of getting drafted on Thursday night. And if he doesn't, he is definitely going to be a top one of the first 10 picks in the second round of the NFL draft. So that's pretty much all I got. So, ladies and gentlemen, we have reached the end of today's show. I want to be live covering the NFL draft on Thursday. Cannot wait. Looking super forward to it. Be out on the lookout for that. I think the draft goes live roughly around 8 o'clock. So we're going to be live roughly about 5 to 10 minutes prior to that, around 7:50, 7:55, to get the show up and running, ready to go, to give our thoughts on leading up to the draft and what we think. Cannot wait for it. I hope you guys all enjoy it, and I will see you all on Thursday. Be safe. Love you guys. Peace, love, and positivity always. Bye.